Welcome back to Jordan's Everyday DIY. So I have a couple projects going at one time here. While I'm working on a coffee table, I'm waiting for some of this clear epoxy to dry. I'm going to go ahead and tackle a little mailbox project that I've been wanting to do since we moved into this house about 5 years ago. We currently have one of those little tan plastic molded mailboxes. It was with the house when we bought it. I've just never really cared for it myself personally. It's kind of crooked, it's low, it kind of drives me nuts. So I'm gonna make one. I got a hold of some cedar. You can see here on the sketch behind me, I have a piece of cedar that is tall enough for this 6x6 post. It's actually, roughly 5.5 inches or so. And then I have another piece that's about a 3x6 that's gonna be the cross member. As you can see here in this picture behind me, I'm going to notch out half of each so those go together and screw those together with some outdoor structural screws. I'm also going to take a little cap, little 1/2 inch layer off the top and get that down to about 3.5 inch square. So that accepts a little, as I show here, a little solar light cap like you would put maybe on a deck post. They make them for deck posts, so it accepts 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch. So I'm going to take that down a little bit, give that a little bit of added character out there, a little light. And then also a couple of gussets that we'll make out of some more of that cedar. So that's the project. I just picked up the mailbox. We're going to do some layout and start getting this thing put together. I also know from measuring the mailbox that I purchased that I want this total height here to the top, or to the bottom of the mailbox, I should say, at about 12.5 inches. So I'm going to make a mark here at 12.5, because my mailbox height is right around 11.5 inches or so, 11, just over 11, 3/4 maybe, somewhere in there. I got to go measure it again to make sure. But that'll put the top of my mailbox right about where the top of this cap is, which is, per my sketch, about the way I want it to look. So at 12.5 inches, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a mark for the thickness of the 3x6 piece that I have, set my depth on my saw for half the thickness of this piece, and I'm going to make several kind of kerf cuts through that opening, do the same thing on that piece, clean them all out with a chisel, and those should fit together nicely. I'll put these together with some outdoor structural screws. I'm going to put 2 at an angle on this side, 2 at the same angle on the other side, so that my 4 screws overlap within the beam. Then we'll get some things cut to length. Got some numbers to put on here for our address and so forth, and then we'll get those gussets made as well. I'll also attach those with the same structural type screws. So let's get this thing marked and going. All right, so I made these lines, and just the thing to keep in mind is that when I set up my circular saw in here to start making these curve cuts, I'm going to make both outside cuts first. Then I can just make the other cuts fairly quickly, just clean it up with a chisel like I mentioned. But I want to make sure that my saw blade is on the inside of these 2 marks. I mean, if you think about the thickness of your pencil lead, I don't want to put my saw blade right on the middle of this, top and bottom, because then I've got a gap that's 1/8 of an inch too big. So I want to try to make this a really snug fit if possible, or as snug as I can do it, and so that this fits together nicely. Okay, I took a dimension on my mailbox. One thing to consider on these mailboxes is I flipped it over so I could see the underside. The underside has about a 3/4 of an inch relief on it. So when I get this all in place, I'm probably going to cut a piece of an exterior grade plywood that I have, just a scrap piece, 3/4 inch thick, whatever the dimension is to fit up underneath my mailbox. And that's what the screws in my mailbox will go down into this. That'll give it a nice firm base. Because if I just set it on top of this and try to cinch that down, it's going to want to, I don't want to say, kind of crease that mailbox inside. So I'm going to put that spacer block on top of this when I get this mounted together. The other thing to consider for the length of this is that when you open the mailbox, the bottom jaw of the mailbox comes and swings down. So you need to take that into account when you come up with your dimension. I'll probably also put a small little miter on the bottom side of this, just as a little finishing detail. So I know mine needs to be 15 inches deep. Then that's my post. My post again is almost 5.5 inches. Get that marked on here. And then I'll do another 15 out the back. So the overall length to my horizontal piece is going to be about 35.5 inches. All right, let's get my circular saw, set the depth, and we'll get these cut out. Okay, well, ran into a little bit of a problem. So my newer circular saw won't set to a depth deep enough to make this cut. I don't want to try to do this on a table saw, cross-cutting myself. This beam's just too long, even on a cross-cut sled. It's just not practical for a one-man job. I have my old Rockwell saw here, which is a preset depth, which is looks like about a 1/16 of an inch too deep, wouldn't you know it. So I'm going to go ahead and make this cut. I'm going to see how close this gets us. And if I have to put a plastic spacer on the inside of this, it's something you'll never see, I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to get my square and get these cut, and we'll see what our depths look like. Now this is an old model 508, no longer has the safety on it, the guard. So probably not your safest of tools anymore, but they just don't make them like this anymore. All right, so we should just be able to kind of break these out of there like a deck of cards. Take all these out. Show you what this looks like. So you can see in there, I got some cleanup to do with the chisel. So that's what I got my mallet and my chisel out here for. We'll do that. So as you can see here, all I did was take this line here from the opening and transfer it to the top here on both sides. Now, I'm going to take a straight edge from the top right corner to the bottom left corner and just make a line. What I want to do now is, let me get a dimension here. So we're about, let's call it 6.5 inches. So let's come down. See if we come in 2 inches there, 2 inches there. Let's come in 1 3/4 inches from that edge and 1 3/4 inches from this edge. So that's where I'm going to drill my 2 pilot holes. Just probably 1/8 of an inch or so. These structural screws I'll show you in a minute, they're not a very big head on them. I just want to countersink those in just a little bit. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to do that same dimension on here. Okay, so here's what a structural screw looks like. As you can see, it's not a very thick head on this. The diameter on this head is just about 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to use a 3/4 inch Forstner bit and take this down just about 1/8 of an inch or so. I'm going to get some painter's tape and make a mark on this bit so I know when I've gone deep enough. Okay, so I did a little bit more cleanup on this. Got this pre-drilled out. I am about a 1/16 of an inch or so. Remember, my blade depth was preset on that Rockwell 508, so there wasn't a lot I could do about it. It actually goes down in there about a 1/16 of an inch off. So I have a couple pieces of laminate that I'm going to double face tape in there. They're 1/16 of an inch thick. That'll give me enough of a spacer in between the two. I'm going to also use some of this Titebond 3. It's an interior-exterior waterproof glue, wood glue. So I'm going to put some of this in there on the laminate as well, even though I have some double face tape. You'll see why in a minute. That's just going to try to help grab it initially. so that I've already got these pre-drilled, but when I get it clamped together, I'm going to put the drill bit in there just to break through this laminate, so I don't have any issues with that with the structural screws. So let's put a little glue in here and we'll see how this goes. All right, so let's get that laminate drilled out from this side, and then we'll have to do the same thing from the other side. My drill bit should bottom out right there. Okay. So punches through that. I may not have an issue with the screws, but I'd rather not grab that laminate if I don't have to. So let's see how this goes. All right, that's about got it. That's pretty solid. The gussets I'm going to put on there are really going to be totally useless as far as structure. I think it'll look good. It's not going to hurt anything, obviously, to have it. But I'm going to get those laid out now so I can see how I need to cut those, do some band work or some work on the bandsaw with those. And then we'll get a piece of 3/4 inch cut for the block that will go underneath the mailbox. And then I've also still got to get cut out my little 1/2 inch cap here for the little solar light. So sorry, I couldn't think of that. All right, let's I'm gonna cut that out next. I think we'll do that way I'm not having to keep flipping this thing over as it gets heavier with them gussets. So I'll get that cut out first, get that set to depth, and then we'll work on those gussets. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think to be safe, I'm gonna take a saw, a hand saw, and just try to get that scribing. I might could pop that off with the chisel, but I'm afraid I'm gonna end up breaking down into the other part, which for the most part will be covered up, but I do wanna have a pretty good edge to screw that solar into. Okay, now that I got a scribe going, I'm gonna see if I can do this with my chisel. If I have bad luck on this first one, I'll do the rest a different way. All right, well, that's not too bad. All right, let me grab this thing. We'll see if it fits. Fits on there pretty good. All right, so now for just a little bit of a pattern, I've taken and I've drew a line from this upper corner. Since I already kind of put a little 45 on here, I drew a 45 down and I laid this piece on there. This is the same piece that the horizontal is made out of. So I've got that laid on. Now what I want to do is I want to mark this on the underside here, there, and there. That'll tell me roughly what that piece needs to be. I'll duplicate it and then figure out what little shape I'm gonna do on the bandsaw on it. Okay, so I'm going to do my best here to try to show you what I'm doing. So here are the blocks that I just cut. When you put those, I'm going to center it on here, but for sake of visibility, I'm going to do it up here near the top so you can see this. I also want to cut this straight down and this straight, okay? And then I want to take and just put a little arc or something to this, something simple, just a little radius that I can do on the bandsaw. So that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. So to further, I think, complete this, I need to get this angle in so I know where I'm going to start my radius, and do the same thing here. So you can see it's going to be a pretty tight little radius there. I want to switch out my bandsaw blade. All right, let's get some glue on these, get them clamped in place, and get them screwed on. All right, well, yesterday we got this thing all glued and screwed together. Today I want to take a bevel bit and I want to go around this top edge. I think I mentioned just to kind of put a little bit of a miter on that. I'll probably do the same thing on the faces of the edges of these two gussets in a couple spots. And I think that's it. I don't think I'm going to do any bevels anywhere else. I had thought about it one time trying to go around this whole thing, but I won't be able to do the gussets because they're already screwed in. If I had done that ahead of time, I probably could have put a nice bevel around just about everything, but that might be a little crazy too. So I'm going to go ahead and get this done, and then do the two bevels, and we'll do a little sanding. I'm going to get this sealed up with a product that I actually sealed my deck with, that we've been very happy with. It's the second year on my deck. The water's still beating. Got the material on Amazon. I'll share the link. Seems to be a pretty good sealer for decks. So right now I'm going to get this trimmed. Okay, so this is the product that I mentioned that I'm going to seal this mailbox post with. This is what I sealed my deck with 2 years ago, and seems to be a pretty durable product. Again, this is second year and water still beads on the deck. So this happened to be a cedar tone, yeah, I really like the product, pretty happy with it. Again, I'll share the link. Ordered on Amazon, got here in a couple days. So let's get this thing sealed. Okay, well, here's the mailbox. A little dusty already. I didn't show you guys how to dig a post hole, but that's essentially it. I came out, pulled out the old mailbox with the tractor, put that in with a leveler, show you underneath. Basically, this is the piece of plywood that I mentioned. Cut that to the size, makes up the depth underneath this so that the door opens. So that all works out. Looks pretty good. The light was on last night. Like I said, pretty dusty already. But that's the mailbox. Hope this video helped you. Pretty sturdy. Until next time, stay blessed.